Hi, it's Ian from Jim Wolf PT, and I'm with Dr. Jonathan Andrews today. And today we're going to talk about normal isn't optional. So I'll introduce you to Dr. Johnny Andrews now.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. So Dr. Johnny Andrews, also officially Dr. Jonathan Andrews, from TED's Health. We are one of the UK's digital TRT providers, but we focus exclusively on all aspects of men's health. We've been operating for quite a few years now, and we are, really passionate about tackling some of the stigmas around testosterone, and obviously providing support from a medical basis, and obviously from a holistic and general basis. So really glad to join in here today and have this conversation.
Yes, so it's just going to be a bit of an informal chat where we look at health in general, talk about what a lot of people are suffering with in terms of their health and fitness, and give some ideas on how they may improve it. Because there's no getting away from it. The normal, particularly in the UK, but a lot of places around the world, isn't one of feeling energized, one of feeling full of life and full of motivation. It's often just spinning the wheels, just spinning those plates day in, day out. And whilst that might seem like that's the way it's got to be, there's certainly another way. And I'm sure Johnny will agree with me on that.
Yeah.
So, in terms of health and fitness, as a coach myself who coaches people in person and online, I see a lot of people struggling with particularly overwhelm and information overwhelm, in the sense that there's that much out there now, online, things like ChatGPT. We've got everything at our fingertips, but then there's so much. It's deciding what needs to be done, and I think this really holds back men and women, but in terms of just getting started. When it comes to exercise, you'll see a lot of people and they'll say, I want to start doing something, but I see these people online, or I've been in a gym and they're doing these exercises. I don't understand it. I don't get it. And there's this preconceived idea that we have to do it a certain way, or we have to start at such a high level. That's not the key. Initially, it is just get the fundamentals, just get the and often people won't feel like doing it, and they say, well, I'll do it when I feel like it. But it's the opposite way around. Start doing it and you'll begin to feel like it, and the momentum will grow. So it's not about working out 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week at that start. It might just be doing 1 day a week to start with and building that. So yeah, that's how I see challenges that a lot of people are facing now. What about yourself, Johnny, on that?
I think that's really nice, like broad based on the starting this discussion, because I think as you obviously see in your world, from a kind of fitness perspective, people make all sorts of excuses, and I think and it's almost too easy not to start even with the basics. And I think that there's a couple of really big factors there. I think sometimes the gap has really grown, where people get to a stage where they feel their health, their fitness is dropped to a level where they don't feel they can achieve now what the ideal is, and that is because their idea of an ideal is an influencer, and it's a photoshopped, airbrushed, man, woman, whoever, and that is what they feel they need to achieve. And the trouble is, there is this kind of sad echo chamber on social media and other platforms, where people, they see comments, they see that, and they suddenly now feel that they have to behave like that, and it's the world and everyone against that. So it's too easy to make excuses, and I think, actually, as you say, it's just a really nice way of saying it. It's like no one's gonna go and work out and perform their best, and or whatever that might be, competing, whether that's physically, whether that's even mentally. And I think what's quite interesting from maybe my world, maybe slightly different to yours, but I'm sure there's so many parallels, is, you know, in the patients that I treat, whether that's in the NHS, whether that's in private practice elsewhere, or obviously the patients that we've been seeing in Ted's Health, we get people who come to us sometimes from the physical aspects relating to testosterone deficiency, and we can dig into what that actually is, because there are a lot. Yes, there might be also those sexual side effects, you know, loss of libido, morning erections, and there's some classic symptoms there. But also there's a lot of mental symptoms. And I think mental health in general is still very poorly understood. It's very stigmatized, and it's so easy to confuse something as now, well, I must be depressed, and therefore my only options are see a doctor, see a quack, get put on happy pills, and many people just get tune off on that. And actually, you know, there's a possibility this could be hormonal related. It could be testosterone. It could be other things as well. You know, and while we don't focus on other things, I'm very, very open and honest in trying to have that conversation and say, look, as a doctor, I need to say that there's a number of things, and it's not all testosterone. And I think maybe to flip it around and put it back to you, Ian, maybe you see this where people also get a fixation where it's like, oh, it must be this, you know, when I get my T levels better, I will do this, or when I hit this weight, I will now go to the gym. And it's actually, again, coming back to that whole excuse like theory, it's like people always say, well, oh, when I get to this weight, this thing, this whatever, this income, then I'm going to work out 5 times, you know, then I'm going to go there, then I'm going to go topless and go on a beach holiday. And it's almost like they're looking for something that is not achievable, and they have no plan of getting there, and saying, well, when I do that, then I'll do this, you know. So, and actually it's those very simple, basic, fundamental things. It's essentially the non-sexy stuff that people need to do, which really can make actually the biggest impact, right? So I guess, you know,
yeah, and it's something I hear quite a lot from people where they'll say, yeah, I'm just going to lose this weight and then I'll start training, or then I'll start going to the gym. Like I always say, the gym is not a museum. It's not there for the finished article. It's there to get you there. And the flip side of that is also the gym isn't essential. You can do things at home. You can do things outdoors, and that's what we do at Gym World PT. We don't try and fit the individual to our programs. We fit to them. So yes. Is the gym a great place to work out? Yes. Is it feasible for everyone? Absolutely not. I mean, someone who's not got a gym nearby, or traffic's terrible, or got young kids, it might not. But that doesn't mean you can't do something. You can't. I mean, even if you're in a small flat with very little space or anything, body weight exercises, you can do that. Get your nutrition better, and I mean, it'll have a massive impact. Going back to what you said earlier as well about social media and that echo chamber, and particularly in regards to body transformations and things like that. I've done competitions myself, I've done photo shoots, and I also know a lot of people who have done them. And it really is a snapshot in time when it comes in. And some people just see it on Instagram or wherever and think that person's walking around all the time like that. And it can be damaging on the mental health side for people to see that. But the flip side of this is I've also seen people where they've got themselves in amazing shape for a photo shoot, and the mental health issues for the years to come hits them as well, because they look back and say, that's how I was, but it was I was depriving myself of social life, any foods I like. So they don't want to do it again, but they want that body that they had. And men and women I've seen who've really got into dark places where they keep looking at the picture and say, I don't look like this now, but I don't want to do that again. So yeah, social media really is just that snapshot in time. You don't see all the stuff behind it. And I can say that myself personally. I'm 50 next year. I've done the photo shoots and that. Do I want to do more? Maybe I might do one or two more when I feel, but I don't want to do it right now. That's for sure, because I know the work I have to put in. Whereas when I'm in maintenance mode, which I've been in for the last couple of years, I do have quite a big element of things that are flexible. I tend to, in terms of myself, I tend to control my breakfast, my snacks, and my lunch, which allows my evening meal to be within reason, whatever the family are having. Do I like
Nice.
a few drinks at weekends? Yeah, most weekends I do now. If I was training for a fourth shooter competition, absolutely not. So
Mm.
it's about getting the balance, but so many people look at it as an all or nothing. Literally,
Yeah.
I have people who say it to me. I'd love to work with you, Ian, but I don't want to give up alcohol. I'm like, why? Do you want to be on stage in 6 months? If that's your goal, then maybe not. But
Yeah.
everything else, if it's within moderation, um, we work to the individual. We don't try and put on, because anything that really is depriving you for any length of time, not going
Mm.
to stick at it. And it's funny how many people tell me they're on the keto diet, and
Yeah.
then you see picture of them at weekend drinking, and also what, just during the weekend?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
People feel
Part-time
themselves,
flexitarians and all sorts. Like, yeah, 100%.
but
100%.
yeah, I mean, things like the keto diet, anything extreme, maybe they might have a place in a short length of time. Say you're going on holiday in 4 weeks' time and you want to have a little bit of a cut or whatever, great. But it's not something, one guy I spoke to told me he'd done it for 2 years solid. I'm like, really? I couldn't think of anything worse than doing the keto diets, strict keto
But
diet for 2 years. Yeah,
yeah, I think, as you say, like, to sustain something, it's like, and I think there's often an ideal that one has to commit, and yeah, I think from a kind of mental perspective, psychological point, like, it is important to get one kind of like geared up and whatever that might be, and that's maybe as true as it is for health goals as it is to fitness. However, coming back to a point you just raised about like maybe having drinks on the weekend and being a little bit relaxed, it's like there is a world where you can work out hard, you can have healthy choices, but you also allow a degree of flex.
yeah,
Cheat meals, is what some people do, but like, because you want to live a life, right? Like, it's all well and good, maybe training for photo shoots and competitions, and if that's what one wants to do, and whatever goals that might be, whether that's physical, whether that's even mental. But it's also important to look at kind of what's average, what's day-to-day life. I can't exactly remember, it might have been a business podcast, but someone was talking about what's your Tuesday. Just plan for an average Tuesday. Why Tuesday? Because it's kind of quite a boring day of the week, right? But like, and you only have probably a few thousand Tuesdays, right? So like, try and have a really good solid Tuesday. Like, what's a routine where there is a bit of flex in. Like, it's not all going to be these 5 a.m. clubs, get up, cold shower, meditate, journal, all this sort of stuff. That I think, again, social media sometimes suggests that these high achievers, these elite performers in every aspect of life, are doing all these crazy protocols. And again, that's one of the reasons that people say, well, I can't do that because I'm not ready to commit to waking up at 5 a.m. I'll wait till the new year. And I think maybe it'd be interesting to hear your points on your views on kind of the gym and fitness industry, and like the seasonality of it, right? Post Christmas, New Year, and stuff like that. And whether you feel there is kind of, what are the push pull factors for people dropping off a cliff come the end of January. And that's one from the gym and fitness, but also things like dry January and other things like that. And maybe how you've seen people successfully navigate that, maybe after years of failure as well.
yeah. There's obviously, in the fitness industry, there are seasons, and January is the big one, isn't it? Everyone through December just let their hair down, do whatever they want, and then January comes bang. And as a business owner, obviously, I will also focus on them. But my answer as a fitness professional will always be, when the need is there, that's when you start. And the worry is that sometimes you'll get people who will sort of tick the box, right, I'm going to sort it in January. So they'll say that in November or December, and it's sort of just like a, right, I can do whatever I want now. And then January comes around, and yeah, they might give it a start, they might not. Similar summer holidays and kids back at school suddenly, a lot of people that drive. But to me, once you've got a real why, seasons don't come into it. And that's when most people have the real success, when they don't say, oh, I've had a bad last month, so I've got it, where they literally just say, I need to do this for, and it's often, again, a lot of people come to me, the most common goal is initially weight loss. But weight loss is so subjective. Yes, a lot of people do need to lose weight, but hitting that scale isn't going to suddenly get you that eureka moment. Oh, I feel brilliant, particularly if you've not done it in the right way. You know, you can lose weight and feel awful. You can lose weight and feel great. You can put weight on and feel great. There's so many factors in it, but so many people that literally are set on that. Once I reach 12 stone, 13 stone, I'll feel great. And I try and dig a lot more into it than that. And again, as a coach, I don't assume things. I don't try and put my goals onto someone else. I'll never be like, well, you should want this, you should want. But what I do is dig down deep to find out what they really want and why they want that. So why do you want to lose the weight? Why? And how will you feel then? How will you feel once you feel it? And that really is the key, because someone who's just looking at weight is likely just to be yo, because it's going to lose the weight, hit the target, thumbs up, right, I can get off this restrictive diet. Weight goes up. What worked last time? The restrictive diet. And you see it not just for months, decades for some people. They literally
it's not good. It's not healthy as well, psychologically,
no.
as well as, you know, physically as well, medically. But I was kind of curious as to your approach. So let's take weight loss, because I think there's so many, you know, it's very topical at the moment, even in the medical community for obvious reasons. But what's your approach? Are you quite metric driven? Are you quite into numbers, or are you generally more kind of big picture? And do you try and sway clients away from focusing on numbers for obvious reasons that you mentioned? Because again, people hit a milestone, then psychologically they go, right, I've got it, I've done it, which is great. Might be helpful when you need to get that extra 5-10% of, you know, effort when people are thinking of throwing in the towel. But actually, as you say, that can mean the brakes come off and all habits die hard, you know, and they go back into that recession of regression. What's kind of your approach on that?
Yeah, so this is two parts. So in terms of numbers on a scale, is it relevant? To some degree, it's part of the story, but other things are involved: body fat, how they feel, how they look, energy, all these different things we take into thing. The worst thing that anyone, not anyone, but I would say getting on a scale every day is just so bad for people in terms of how they feel mentally. And I've seen it before, where you'll have someone and they're doing all the right things, and they weigh themselves day one, weights drop. Day two, weights drop. Day three, weights drop. Feeling great. Day four, weights not dropped. It stayed the same or even gone up. But they did everything right. What's the point? They forget the 3 days previous. What's the point? This doesn't work. It's looking at that bigger picture. Going back to how I do my coaching and that, I pride myself in really basing it on the individual. And by that, I mean, in terms of tracking and things like that, I talk to the person first. And again, obviously, if someone's ever had an eating disorder or anything like that, doing things like tracking your calories and macros, complete no-no. The flip side of that is, though, that unless you know where you are, the element of guesswork significantly grows. So I'll always have that conversation. But first of all, like I say, I'll make sure they've not got any medical condition or disorders, that thing, because then we've got a different approach. But if they haven't, I will always say, look, I can do you plans, I can help you, whatever. But if we don't know where you actually are right now, there's a lot of guesswork involved, because I've trained people and they'll come to me, go, Ian, I want to lose weight, I'm eating healthy, and I'm just putting weight on. And then I'll look at what they've eaten and I'll say, well, yeah, you're eating healthy, but you're eating too much of it.
Yeah.
Or someone will say, I'll say, do you eat a lot of protein? And they'll say, yeah, I have loads of protein. And then we look at it and go, you don't. And they'll say things like, oh, I thought there was protein in bananas or bread or something. Like, people have different misconceptions.
Of course.
I always think, if feasible, finding out where you are, which only involves tracking for a short length of time, that is a good. When you're starting something new, when you're resetting, when you've got a new goal, knowing where you are, because without knowing where you are, like I say, the guesswork goes up. But then in terms of people, once we get on track, then the amount of tracking and that, some people love, some people literally love to track. I know a lot of people who they put into, my app has like a food tracker in. They put the food in at the start of the day and then say, right, I'll just follow that. Some people like that. Some people absolutely hate tracking. And for those people, I just say, well, you don't need to track all the time. Do it intermittently. By that, it might be, right, 1 week every 6, 8, or 10 weeks, you track as sort of like a safety net. Because what I've also seen, again, from doing this for years, is people can like get on track, say, right, I know what I'm doing, I've got this nailed, and then they just go off, and a year later they go, I'm back to where I am. I've got all the weight back on, I've no energy again, what's happened? And what that usually is, it's not the big change, it's the little changes week by week that go unnoticed, but when you put 52 of them together, suddenly become back to where you were. So just having that little safety net for a lot of people works well, where they say, right, every 10 weeks, I just do a quick check, right, I've gone a bit higher on my calories, or my protein is dropping a bit lower, or whatever. And obviously I'm there to me. But like I say, I pride myself on giving a service that's fitted to the individual, not them fitting to me. So yeah,
I think that's all in the name, right? PT, personal trainer. Like, otherwise, you might as well just, as you say, you could probably use AI now to generate fitness and plans and things like that. I mean, and again, from our side, like, trying to draw a parallel in the medical world, especially in what we do. So in a proactive, preventative service like Ted's Health, where we're, the patients come to us are usually coming not when they are acutely sick, unwell, like needing to go to A&E type thing. But they're coming because they're proactive. They say, look, I've been experiencing X, Y, and Z. I've gone to see whoever. I've gone to a GP. I've done this, I've that. I've hit a wall. I've done lifestyle things, but now I don't know what else. And yes, with our current focus on testosterone, it's really interesting, and that's why weight's a really interesting talking point, because as I'm sure you're aware, the obesity, which is kind of responsible for so many medical health conditions, illness in general, is so tied in with affecting hormone health. So being obese can be the cause for testosterone deficiency, pre-diabetes as well, and often that is as a result of, or even being diabetic. That insulin resistance, again, is often due to is like often lifestyle induced in type 2 diabetes, right, from obesity or increased weight gain. And simply shifting that, so losing weight can, but again, you've probably seen that as well, can lead to improvements in testosterone. So that's completely, if you like, natural, right? That's not putting anything in, that's not taking medication or even supplements, that's not TRT, which is replacement, simply by one following something. And that might be diet, but that's usually coupled with exercise and other things as well, right? Lifestyle and reducing stress and sleeping well can really positively compound and lead to improvements in hormone health, in testosterone levels. However, it's also the degree of weight loss. So sometimes a very modest weight loss, someone might say, hey, I've lost, the scale's going down, I've lost weight, I've had to get a new trousers now. However, actually my testosterone levels have dropped. And why is that? And that might actually be because that that free testosterone is now bound, so it's actually not bioavailable. So it actually might lead to a functional deficiency. So what you were saying earlier about how sometimes people might start seeing an improvement and then they actually don't feel so good, it'd be interesting to to see whether that can in some cases account for it. It can sometimes actually need quite significant weight loss, up to 20% or something, to actually have a real noticeable sustained improvement in testosterone levels. So I think weight is only one side of the coin, and I think coming back to what we were talking at the beginning about just being holistic and working with for you clients, for me patients, is I think is the whole thing really that we need to be better at.
Yeah, I agree with that. In terms of testosterone, Johnny, obviously I work with a whole range of people, but a lot of men in the 40s, 50s, even 60s. What would be for you the telltale signs that someone is low on testosterone, deficient, whatever you want? What would you be looking at? And then what sort of action? Obviously, I've talked about the exercise, talk about nutrition. There's people who are exercising, are eating the right things most of the time, being healthy, yet they still may be low. What would be the tell signs of that?
Yeah, so I think basically, I mean, the question that isn't asked enough is, what are the signs and symptoms of low testosterone, low T? And I think there's a lot of misconception. People sometimes think, oh, well, testosterone, that's only related to muscles, so I'm okay in that department. Or I don't have don't have any issues going to the gym, I must be fine, it can't be testosterone. But as I said earlier, there's the mental component. So from a mental perspective, that means low mood, low energy, low drive, motivation. And drive's an interesting one, right? Because that might be something people notice, as in, oh, I just can't be bothered to go to the gym now. I can't be bothered to get up early and go to the gym. And again, it might be something that people just put down to being a phase. Oh, had the flu, recovered, or it was Christmas, can't be bothered. And actually, or blame it on the weather. And actually, over time, it might be that they start, excuse me, noticing that, well, actually, I'm less motivated at work. I'm just, it can be a hard thing to put a finger on, but lack of motivation, lack of drive, that's quite a key one from a mental perspective. And like I say, mood, again, quite closely twinned with actual mental health issues like depression. And of course, it's very tricky because we meet patients all the time who have been diagnosed with depression, rightly or wrongly, maybe put on treatment, but actually didn't see benefits on that. Later down the line, found to actually have a level that was biochemically low, meaning their testosterone levels were low T, alongside not only maybe mood, but other symptoms, physical symptoms, weight gain, as we said, low muscle mass, maybe some of the sexual side effects, which I'll come on to in a second, and maybe later end up having testosterone replacement if appropriate, and actually seeing real benefits in their mood. So actually reversing some of those things that they thought was depression and actually maybe was incorrectly diagnosed. Now, I'm not trying to say that all depression is low testosterone. That I need to make very, very clear. But there is no one size fits all. One of the things that we're really passionate about in Ted's Health, and me as a doctor, just anywhere I work, whether even in the NHS, is treating the person in front of me. That personalized care, and therefore everything I'm saying is, of course, generalized. This is not a specific medical advice and all those disclaimers. But yeah, simply, I mean, so there's the mental side of things, and I think that gets often poo-pooed and ignored a lot, right? Because people go, blokes as well, they just say, well, mental health is what it is, so just crack on, man up. And so often it's not the symptoms that people notice first. It's things like maybe the sexual side effects, which can be quite embarrassing for obvious reasons, right? People don't want to open up about that. People don't want to admit there's a problem. People find it very difficult to talk to someone, and even if that is a doctor who is, hopefully a trustworthy professional like ourselves, getting them to open up can be difficult. But yeah, sexual side effects. There is quite commonly the cardinal sign, the main sign and symptom is loss of morning erections. And I think if we want to look at what testosterone deficiency symptoms could be, we look at what the opposite is, as in what do people experience when testosterone levels are as best as they can, when they are optimal, and that is typically seen through puberty, right? Because from puberty you go from boy into man. So from your teens into your 20s, that is when most men will see their, well, nearly every man will see their, hopefully their best hormonal health, right? Their best T levels. Because testosterone is not only driving that development, so it's a sexual hormone, so yes, it's the development of becoming a man. So yeah, testicular and genital development, but also physically, so yes, muscles, but also bone health, getting bigger, hair growth, facial hair growth, etc., and excess of that even affecting the skin and causing acne, deepening of the voice, all those things that we typically associate with puberty. But with that also comes other things that we see with hormone health, right? Which with teens and their hormones, making them, that much more labile emotionally, getting into fights and whatever, and that's not uncommon. But obviously what we do know is that testosterone levels do peak, and they peak in the 20s, and then they will stay there for a little while, but eventually those levels for all men will slowly decline. And I think what is very interesting, and I think people don't always know, is compared to menopause, I think we're very familiar with what menopause is, because of good publicity. That typically women in their, it varies, but in their 40s to 50s will come a point where they experience some symptoms and their hormone levels do fundamentally change over a very short period, a couple of years. But those symptoms might precede that, and obviously also continue afterwards. But for men, it's very subtle. It's very gradual, typically from the mid 30s to 40s, but it can be earlier in some cases, and it can also be a little bit later. Levels will tend to decline on average 1 to 2% per year. But of course, we're assuming that every man is the same. And I think coming back to, the title of this, why normal isn't optimal. If we're talking normal as in levels of blood, we're going back to what I was asking you about metrics and, weight, weighing scales and kilograms and pounds and whatever metrics people use. I think numbers are important. It's very important to have evidence, or something to go on, and we spoke about this actually before the call, on kind of the importance of baselines versus not just assuming, oh, it must be this, but that's only half the picture. So when we treat patients, yes, having blood work, biochemistry is important and is partly required for us to be able to responsibly prescribe treatment if it is appropriate. But the other part of it is also going on the symptoms. And why do I say that? Because actually it's possible that someone's level could be what someone seems like it's low, but actually they feel fine. And does that person need treatment? Well, probably not. Do they want treatment? It's a different story, question, but they probably aren't going to seek a blood test, and therefore they don't know that. We obviously don't see those cases. What we often do find is people who do a blood test and the blood test seemingly is normal, but then they still feel rubbish, and then they're going around the houses saying, well, why is that? And what I say is, it's also important to know who is calling it normal. And why do I say that? Because reference ranges vary significantly. It depends on the lab you use, and they calibrate to different standards. It also depends on the countries as well. Quoted levels of testosterone from the US, from North America, typically it's about 28.3 times higher. So they use completely different scale. So people will quote numbers in the 300 and the 400, 300 to 800 and stuff like that. And what we use is complete. It's obviously it's nearly 30 times smaller. So people will be quoting numbers like 8 and 10 and 12 for total testosterone and free testosterone. And it's I think it's really important to also make sure that one is actually aware of what that is and calibrate it, not getting fixated on the numbers. And I think that's part of our responsibility as a healthcare provider, but also as doctors and clinicians, to actually educate people and inform them and provide them information on that. But yeah, the final point on that is that the NHS, as wonderful as it is, and I am an NHS doctor as well, does use reference ranges which are sadly quite outdated. They're based on population levels which are not I think accurate and reflective of what should be healthy hormonal health. We utilize protocols that are developed and based on guidelines from the British Society of Sexual Medicine, which is run and contributed by leading medical specialists, urologists, endocrinologists, and GPs. And our guidelines do differ. So just for quick context, typically in the NHS, if you go and see a GP, if you have a total testosterone level, if it's about 8 nanomoles per liter and above, a GP would say, yes, that's fine. And that is because that's what the cutoff is. And actually, what the BSSM says is between 8 and 12 nanomoles per liter, that could still be considered low. So if you're scoring 9, 10, or 11, if you went to a GP, typically most NHS GPs, unless they are really aware of the BSSM guidelines and have worked or trained elsewhere, would probably say you're completely fine. This cannot be testosterone related.
That's why I was sorry, Jack. That's why I was going to ask you. If someone was experiencing low mood, brain fog, stuff like that, and they went to the GP, is it something the GP would look at and say, oh, that's possibly low testosterone, or would they be looking at, they need this antidepressant, they need this, they need time off work? That's what I would be unsure about in terms of thing. But I think you've sort of answered that, where they might tick a box if it's looking okay, not dig deeper into it.
It's a really tricky one, because I don't want to come across like I'm bashing GPs as well. And I think we see this in lots of things. In a previous life, I used to work in a specialist iron clinic, and we focused exclusively on iron deficiency and treatments. And again, and we used intravenous iron replacement, which again, lots of doctors who trained many years back said, "Oh, that's really dangerous," because the old types of medication for iron used to be associated with allergic reactions. The newer ones, which have tons of data and been around for many, many years, are actually much, much safer. And the same is probably true of hormonal replacements, including TRT. There is a lot of stigma around the treatments, and therefore this, I think because of that, a lot of GPs will probably also be a little bit reluctant. So getting a GP maybe in the first place to even consider testing testosterone levels, that might be hard. That's possibly half the battle, especially if you're maybe in your 30s. And I think the sad thing is, and we can maybe touch on this in a second, but society has changed quite a lot. You've probably seen the stuff on social media about how male hormonal health has declined over the years as a population. The median level has really, over the decades, over the last 30 or 50 years, compared to our ancestors and cavemen who probably had very high T levels, is dropped. And there are so many factors here, and I actually would love to let you jump in on those, because a lot of those are lifestyle related and physical and diet. But
we don't have to chase saber-toothed tigers anymore, do we?
Well, we don't. And that's we've changed fundamentally how we live, and our environment has changed, and how we work, and all of that. So and that probably over time has knock-on effects on subsequent generations, genetically at the genetic level. But yeah, coming back to what you asked, essentially, I think to summarize, yes, it can be really tough, and so I'm here kind of with open arms saying, any man who's on the fence or is struggling to get to the bottom of whether it is testosterone related or not, coming via Ted's Health, you can just book and get a simple blood test, and you will get with that a consultation with myself and my team, or all my team, who would spend some time with you. So we are all UK based trained clinicians, who have a keen interest in this, and actually genuinely are not here to try and sell you anything. The number of times we actually have to say, actually, thankfully your levels are okay. However, here are some other things, and maybe write letters or referrals, or point people elsewhere if appropriate. So genuinely, we're here to look after men's health in general, not just try and say, yeah, put everyone in TRT, because I think coming back to it, normal isn't optimal. By an NHS standard, a man who maybe has a level of total testosterone of 9 nanomoles per liter, by NHS standards, that might be normal, right? Could they actually still be having several symptoms of low testosterone, loss of morning erections and affecting their sexual life, increased weight gain, feeling it harder to shift that, feeling it harder to maintain muscle mass, low energy, low mood, lack of drive, and maybe that general kind of thing for 5 years, and saying, well, maybe it's because I've hit my 40s or whatever, or assuming it's just because they're tired with kids or having a stressful lifestyle. Well, actually, that's often a lot of the men that I speak to, of all ages, some in their 30s, some in their 60s and 70s, come with that and just saying, well, it must be something else, it must just be life. And actually, in reality, it could really be because that level of 9, which some labs and providers in the NHS may say is normal, actually isn't what it should be. It should actually be higher for that individual. And of course, I don't want to dig on what numbers it should be for a particular person, because again, there's so much individual variation. But yeah, I think the key take home is not getting caught up on the numbers too much.
No, and what you said about the consultation, I think that is a real key element which Ted's Health offers, because obviously I work with a lot of different people. Some have gone, and some people have just contacted me on social media who aren't my clients, who have gone to certain providers who have had a blood test, had a second blood test, and then a report to them, and that report could be in a foreign language because they just learn. So there's usually, I've had a number of people send reports over to me, which I'm happy to have a look through. Whilst I understand quite a bit of it, I'm not an expert on it. So having a consultation where someone can literally tell you as many of those variables that just aren't going to be told on a blood test, I think is key. So that's what, when I looked into Ted's Health, that bit really stood out for me, because again, like I say, I'm not going to name the companies, but I know a number of companies there. There's not that personal aspect. It's a blood test, second blood test, and then a report. And the people who have come to me are like, they've put a different number of different options, but I don't have a clue which one is for me. Should I be doing any? Should I be taking this option? I don't know. So talking with someone who's qualified, who again isn't there to just sell them something, but give them the honest thing. Maybe they don't need it. Maybe I know there's a lot of different options, isn't there, Johnny? What different options are there in terms of testosterone?
Well, I think I always begin it by going first from, medication has its place. Absolutely. And you'd say, well, of course he says that, he's a doctor, but genuinely, like, before all of that, it's all the lifestyle stuff, right? So we take that holistic view. So and I think, again, doctors sadly sometimes just say, well, lifestyle stuff, okay, skip to the meds. And actually, no, I think there's a real big place for digging into that. And that's probably where that's your world. And actually really understanding what people's awareness is. Like you say, they might say, well, protein, yeah, I'm eating loads of protein, and actually in reality they're getting very little protein. They're not eating well for that. Minerals and nutritional deficiencies, maybe they're not taking anything, or they're low in the zinc and the magnesium and the vitamin D, and these are things that might contribute to less than optimal hormonal health. But sleep's a big one. But once, assuming all those things are optimized,
Yeah.
medication options, do vary. So we also, it depends on where a man's at in their life journey. Fertility is a key thing, and I think we do sadly see it where people who have got hold of anabolic steroids from whichever source, especially for kind of an edge when they're younger, maybe competing or just for the gym, but not really obviously being told about what the risks are to their fertility, and then later down the line struggle when they're looking to have kids and a family. And of course, it can recover, assuming you are off replacement, but it doesn't always, it's not guaranteed. And so we spend a lot of time obviously counseling men on that. And if somebody is potentially looking to maintain their fertility, as in they want to have kids soon or in the future, or they're not sure, there are certain treatment options which would still preserve that, and in some cases actually optimize it. And I think one of the beauties of being, regulated medical providers is we can also make those decisions if there's obviously, if it's appropriate to prescribe unlicensed medication. We can use medication like clomiphene or clomid, which is typically used as a fertility drug for women, but it can also improve the spermatogenesis, so that's the development and maturation of sperm, so it makes men more fertile, but also has an action on the testes for production of testosterone, because that's where most testosterone is produced in men. There's also some from the adrenal glands and elsewhere. So that can really see an improvement in testosterone levels naturally, and it's not replacement. It's actually not TRT. So that, that's an option. HCG as well works very similarly, is an option. And there's oral, there's injectable, but then there's the replacement, and the different types, and we use licensed medication. There's a lot of data on here, and as time goes on and on and on, it only is not, thankfully, looking safer and safer. And yes, traditionally people used to say, well, I need stick with gels and injections. So yes, that is something we offer at Ted's Health. Not everyone likes to do something every day, and so we have an injection which covers men from between 9 and 12 weeks, so roughly about 3 months, which means typically you're probably only having 4 injections a year.
Right.
So it's an injection. We work with providers to facilitate that being done by a trained nurse, in a safe manner, and they take care of all of that, as well as do blood tests. So essentially, a man, if they are appropriately deficient and eligible for TRT, could sign up for an option where essentially they have a nurse come to them, and 4 times a year they have an injection in the backside. It takes a couple of minutes. They have their blood test there, and we do blood tests periodically, so usually every 3 months, to also monitor things, not only the testosterone levels, to check that they are going the right way, and also make adjustments as needed, but also from a safety perspective, we look to look out for any potential side effects, because it can make the blood a little bit stickier, and so we look for that, because obviously if there's increased blood viscosity, so thicker blood, potentially that could lead to increased risk of quite nasty things, strokes and heart attacks potentially. But obviously we can mitigate that. We keep an eye out for that. We look at also baseline health. We look at the kidney function, and we look at things like the prostate health, from markers like PSA, one of the key markers that's used for prostate cancer. And so one of the, we're actually very proactive on that front, and if there are any concerns, we can make a decision and further investigate, write referrals, arrange scans, whatever is needed. From a safety perspective, in many cases actually we might be actually more likely to identify something earlier because someone's having regular checkpoints.
Yeah.
And that's true whether a man is taking a gel, which is usually done daily, an injection, like I say, which is done maybe 4 or 5 times a year, Or what is soon to come out, which we're very excited about, is quite newly approved oral capsules. So these are kind of encapsulated lipophilic preparations which kind of bypass the liver and the digestive system, which in the old days, if you Google and read online in the 70s, there were concerns of tablet forms of steroids causing liver issues and being quite nasty. But thankfully, due to the power of modern science and technology, they're newer preparations which are much safer and don't have those safety concerns. And of course, that is game changing because not everyone likes to do put gels or creams on daily for obvious reasons. They might
Yeah.
be concerned about that rubbing off on someone like a partner or a child or even a pet. And so to take a capsule or a tablet is significantly less friction. And I think maybe it'd be great to hear from your side as well, where you see these friction points, because to summarize, yes, we have a range of options, and that down to the personal level, that's kind of part of my job and our team, is to really have those conversations. That's the beauty of that consultation, so we can really decide what is the best fit. We ask the questions, and people obviously get to share about what they feel comfortable with, and we make a treatment plan accordingly. So no two treatments are necessarily the same, which is part of the art of it.
That's really good to hear about the testing going forward, though, because again, I've never taken testosterone, but I think there might be a perception that sometimes it's a case of get diagnosed, get your stuff, get on with it. Whereas what you're saying makes total sense, because where someone is now and where they may be in 6 months' time, a year time, things can happen. And if it's just being left unregulated or unmonitored, it's sort of like the weight loss thing, where if you don't have that safety net, suddenly you get a year or 2 years in and go, wow, what's happened? And so I really like that you're doing that in terms of the company, is looking at not just prescribing someone, but monitoring that and changing it and adjusting it as much as needed, because there's a lot of people out there who get onto something and they stay on for it for years and lose even track of why they're on it. So
Not in the first place, yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And I think that's, there's many reasons why we do that, apart from it kind of being good medical practice and the right thing to do. But if you're not tracking things, I think coming back to one of the things you said, it might like periodically doing something. So maybe calorie tracking, but not doing it every day, maybe doing it every 3 months or 6 months. And actually that's probably better, because you can pick out those kind of where you drop off, and then you kind of recalibrate. Same reason here. We might decide that a dose is X, or a certain protocol, 2 applications, 3 applications, or we call them pumps of the gel, for example. But that might change. That might become 2. That might go up. That might go down, based on what that person's latest blood profile will show, which will be influenced by their lifestyle. So it might be, and it's very true, and I'm sure you might be responsible for this, hopefully in some way, that after starting with Jim Wolf, someone loses a lot of weight. They lose their adipose tissue, they lose fat, which is great. That's going to have an impact on their hormone health. And like I say, it can be positive, but it can, depending on the degree, even for a period of time, actually mop up all that free testosterone. So they actually feel worse and their hormone health is down, even though they've lost weight, and that's doing wonders for other blood work and physically and everything else, and mentally. And to touch on what's very topically medically, injectable GLP-1s, so semaglutide, so Manjaro and Wegovy injections, which a lot of people are taking successfully to lose weight. But yes, it has to be coupled with all the lifestyle stuff, which would be great to hear your side on it. But interestingly, I'm sure you've seen this in one of the key things is muscle loss, because yes, you're losing weight, but you're losing good and bad weight in some ways, right? You're losing adipose tissue, but you're also mostly losing muscle, unless you are having a really high good high protein diet,
Yeah.
coupled with strength-based exercise, resistant-based exercise, which not everyone does. Men might do that, but actually more women are on these medications, and typically they might not follow that. They might do a bit of cardio, but that's not. So actually, they're seeing all their muscle mass go, and that leads to increased skin laxity and some of the cosmetic issues that some people have. But what's a really good, to bring it back to where we're interested in this. Well, actually, here's a really good use case where appropriate for TRT, because TRT can help support lean weight, meaning it is anabolic, so it can lead to muscle growth and maintenance, which is key when someone is actually potentially losing muscle, and it can also help with losing adipose tissue, so keeping the fat off, essentially. So there is a place where they can be used synergistically together, and there is a place where actually maybe someone is potentially on a GLP-1 to maybe get them off down from a very high weight, which might be causing them joint pains and issues and being unable to exercise in the first place. But actually, it might be that they're more appropriately managed on a hormone replacement like TRT.
Yeah. And it's good that you've touched on the weight loss injections, because that, as a fitness coach, there's a lot of people in the fitness industry, and when they hear weight loss injections, straight away, shouldn't be on that, shouldn't be doing this. I like to feel myself as open-minded, and I think they definitely have the place. Someone who's literally severely obese, just to say, "Oh, go and do some exercise and eat healthier," it's not it's not going to hit the mark. So something like the weight loss injection for a certain length of time could have a real impact on the person, just kickstarting it. Where it does worry me is a number of people who seem to be literally seeing it as this magic solution, this shortcut that literally means they can avoid exercise, they can eat what they want because they can go out drinking at weekend and keep the weight down. And I feel that is where the real risk is. And there's a lot of what I see on places like TikTok, unregulated companies and people just selling. I don't know what, it could be anything, but
It
selling.
might not even be the actual medication. Yeah. And that's the sad thing. And I think coming back to even what we do, which is mainly TRT and ED, and because these are quite highly desirable things. So losing weight, regaining your vitality and your muscle mass and stuff from TRT, or losing weight as GLP-1s potentially. There is a high incentive, and when people see barriers or friction or price or doctors, some people get skeptical and say, well, I'll message my friend, or I'll message the person on Instagram, I'll order it online, black market, whatever. And I mean, you probably say, hey, that's obvious, you're a doctor, you're saying that, but there is really good reason why I say be careful about that, because one, you don't know what those things are. You don't even know if it's produced somewhere that is safe, that is sterile. But you genuinely, if they're not tested, if there isn't the trials and the evidence and they're standardized, maybe you do get a good batch, but maybe you also get a bad one, which is full of other things, and maybe it has too high a dose or too low a dose, which could be dangerous, right? It could crash levels and do all sorts of things. And I think there's often a lot of people who come come to us, and they're maybe a bit skeptical about medication and big pharma and drugs and that. And they're like, oh, I want something natural. And they read about natural hormone replacements. And we'll talk about maybe supplements in a quick second. I know time's getting away with this, but like, it's very interesting, because actually, when we're talking about hormone replacement, everything is synthetic. The only natural is in your own body, so everything else is a degree synthetic, whether it's plant-based or not. It's just how synthetic is it. And there's a reason why medication arguably is better, licensed, regulated medication, because it has to hit certain standards. Gone through the data, we know if it's efficacious, does it even work, and also if it's safe. Whereas what I have seen is sometimes some of these slightly more natural therapies, which might not have all that data, whoever they're prescribed by, Sometimes what that can do is it can lead to such high levels of testosterone that then starts getting converted by an enzyme into estrogen. They start developing, for men, they can start developing breast tissue, something called gynecomastia, which is
Yeah.
obviously not very pleasant. So there is
No.
that flip side that actually too high levels are not a good thing. And so coming back to why it is important and good to actually routinely check levels as we do, it's also to make sure it doesn't go too high. And that's not because we're trying to police people. There are dangers and there are risks which are not pleasant for
Yeah.
having your levels too high.
Yeah. No, totally get that. And I've spoke to people who've had that problem. So yeah, the monitoring of it is absolutely key. But like I say, going back to the weight loss injection in terms of health and fitness, a weight loss injection is not going to build muscle. It's not going to strengthen your bone. It's not actually going to build. I won't say that it could build some discipline, but the discipline of putting in the work to be healthy, it's just not there. And a lot of people are seeing it as this shortcut. And again, I do feel it has its place, and
Mhm.
I know doctors are prescribing it to certain people with they're at a certain level, but the people who literally are just wanting a quick way to lose a touch of weight and keep doing what they know probably is wrong is not the way forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's the real the point that you said. There is a place for everything. And I think even coming back to what we do and maybe tying that in with that point I made about supplements, there is also the case that sometimes men test with us and they aren't eligible. Maybe they're at the cusp, but they're a bit borderline, and we don't feel it's quite appropriate to prescribe TRT. Maybe, but they're saying, oh, but we really want it. What are other options? And something that we've been very passionate about is taking all of these kind of concerns that men come to us with, and we've actually spent a lot of time researching and identifying a formulation that we have created ourselves, where there is also some scientific basis. Now, do these have the same level of studies and rigor as clinical trials as medication? No, but obviously there's reasons behind that because it's not pharma sponsored and patentable
Yeah,
medication and stuff like that. But what we have spent a lot of time and effort doing is identifying specific things that actually we have seen competitors of all shapes and sizes who claim they're putting something in, but actually it's a very, very low dose. It's essentially placebo. It's microdosing. They're just putting a few names that people say, hey, it's got ashwagandha or macaroot or whatever. But we've identified something, six things, and we have put it at a dose where we feel there should be some potential effect. And that's why I'm really big in saying potential. This is not something I prescribe. It's something that we will soon start retailing, so will be available through us and potentially other partners as well in the coming weeks and months. And I say that because that might be something that can be supplementary if somebody is on TRT, but also if they're not, or they're not quite eligible. And of course, it's not a replacement; it's not a medication. So for those people who have those concerns, and obviously, generally supplements tend to be more affordable as well, which I think is
yeah,
a key thing. And I think coming back to the point we've been both harping on about is kind of finding what works for somebody. That's really the key thing.
yeah, totally. And interesting what you say about supplements. And obviously, from my perspective, the supplements that a lot of clients or people when they're going to work with me will ask the question, do I need supplements? And from my point of view, it's usually things like protein powders, maybe creatine and things like that. And my most common answer is no, you don't need supplements. But I take a number of supplements and I take them from the perspective of convenience. And what I mean by that is, yes, most things can be got from a very good diet, but it's not always practical. I always say to ones like, I know that after I work out, I want to have something protein based pretty quickly. Could I get that from an egg white omelette or a chicken breast or a tin of tuna? Yes. Do I want to take that to the gym? Not particularly. If I took tuna to the gym, I'd probably get banned. But so I think convenience also plays a part. And sometimes people take it on and go, well, you can get this from there, you can get this on where. But if it doesn't fit with the person's lifestyle, then they shouldn't feel bad about taking something that just fits in with them at certain times. Like I say, I take a protein powder twice a day. I take some supplements, and like I say, it's not to because I can't get it from food. It's just a convenience perspective from my side.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? It's like identifying what works for people, and it has to fit into their lifestyle. You know, sometimes there are, as people know, people like Brian Johnson who spend $2 million and take 64 different supplements every day. Is that actually feasible for most people? No, of course not. Of course it's not. But yeah.
It is finding, it's about finding what works for you, isn't it? Really, and that's where the personal element. And again, I go back to what I like about Ted's Health. It's not just a report; it's speaking to the person, finding out about them, and then giving advice. I'm mindful we've gone on for quite a while, haven't we, Johnny? It's nearly an hour and 10 minutes, so we're probably in a position we best wrap this up. But before we go, do you want to tell people how to find you, find Ted's Health, and then I'll do the same for Jim Wolf.
Yeah, likewise. Well, thank you so much, Ian. And I'm sure we both, if we didn't have such curfew on us, but it's been great to have this conversation. And I think if anyone listening is interested in anything that we say, welcome to reach out to us. Obviously, connect with us, Ted's Health on LinkedIn, if you're watching us here, or even on Instagram or other social media platforms. We are also accessible on the World Wide Web, on the internet, tedshealth.com. So please come visit our website, have a little read. And if you are interested, feel free to get a blood test, and you will get a consultation with one of our team. And that's usually the first step, I would say. But yeah, if you genuinely have questions, or you're interested, or you want to have a chat with us in whatever capacity, whether that's as a prospective patient, whether that's wanting to have a conversation like this, we're really open to it. So yeah, looking forward to hearing more from this, and maybe even having more conversations like this in future, Ian.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to have another conversation. I think we've only touched the surface, really, in terms of what we could go into. But yeah, it's been brilliant speaking to you, Johnny. Obviously, this is going out live on LinkedIn. But in terms of myself, Jim Wolf PT, you can find me on jimwolfpt.com. I'm always on LinkedIn, so send me a message, and I'll be happy to help with anything fitness or health related that I can. But like I said, Johnny, brilliant to speak with you. I found it really, really interesting, and thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Ian. Let's do it again.
Thank you.